Good morning and God bless you, Mr. England and fellow classmates. Today I'll be talking about if the March on Washington in 1963 succeeded in its agenda to achieve equal race rights for black people. I think the March on Washington did succeed in its agenda through passing legislation for civil rights, through representing its agenda with integrity, and maintaining its focus on black employment issues instead of changing the agenda because of what society thought of it at the time. I think that passing legislation for civil rights helped the March on Washington succeed in its agenda to achieve equal race rights, as it pressured the government and declined violence towards black people. This is evident when it is said, according to the King Institute at Stanford, the march was successful in pressuring the administration of John F. Kennedy to initiate a strong civil rights bill in Congress. This is especially important as after this event, racism had ceased systemically, as black people being more and more involved in politics. Socially, though, it was still prevalent well into the 1980s in relevant political figures like Ronald Reagan, according to MSNBC, who say that opposition carries on. Even Reagan in 1983, when he was asked, "Do you still think that King was a communist?" he said, "We'll have to wait 35 years to find out," meaning the opening of the FBI files. So the suspicion and animosity towards King and his legacy carries on well into the 80s. In 2018, I think that there has been a massive decline in racism in Western society than there was back then, as black people have the same rights as white people, and they're being treated normally in pop culture and media. This is the effect passing legislation for civil rights had on helping the March on Washington succeed in its agenda to achieve equal race rights, as it pressured the government for a civil rights bill and reduced violence towards black people. I think that through representing its agenda with integrity, the March on Washington succeeded in its agenda to achieve equal race rights, as it showed people that they were being genuine and persuaded people to side with them. This is evident according to Mississippi History Now, when it is said how Martin Luther King Jr. used the tactic of nonviolence as a tool during the civil rights era to dismantle racial segregation, discrimination, and inequality. He hoped that the minds would be changed if they saw the violence being committed against black people who protested. This obviously worked, as legislation was passed from the efforts of the March on Washington and other black rights protests, such as the Montgomery bus boycott, which was also led by Martin Luther King Jr. If they had gone in guns blazing, killing any person in their way, this wouldn't have gotten them the same impact, because let's face it, they would have proved the major opinion that black people were disgusting criminal scum and would have ruined any chances of being supported by the enemy, which was the white people at the time. This proves the effectiveness of representing the March on Washington's agenda with integrity and how that succeeded by showing people that they were being genuine and honest. I think that through maintaining its focus on black employment issues, but also opening up the subject to a more general approach, the March on Washington succeeded in its agenda as it showed people that they were confident in what they were standing for and not changing depending on the major public opinion. According to the National Archives of the United Kingdom, the original aim of the march was to draw attention to black employment issues. The new aim was to put pressure on the Congress to pass a civil rights bill. This put more people in the net of who was affected, as all black people instead of only those who worked, which is a great strategy if you're trying to gain a large crowd. This worked, as a CBS poll finds that 8 in 10 Americans think that the act has had a positive effect on the country, and only 1% think it's been negative. This is probably the main reason why the march has become such a major historic event, because it has evolved into something more, something everybody could help and support. This is how, through maintaining its focus on black employment issues, the March on Washington succeeded, as it showed people that they were being confident in what they were standing for and not changing dependent on dominant public opinion. In conclusion, I think the March on Washington in 1963 did succeed in its agenda through passing legislation for civil rights, through representing its agenda with integrity, and maintaining its focus on black employment issues instead of changing the agenda because of what a majority of society thought of it at the time.